Thank you. So as Nico said, my name is Emily Schwartz. I'm a vice president of public affairs at a PR agency called Bryson Gillette. In a prior life, I was the head of data policy for Uber, which is how I first got introduced to many of you in this room. And since going on to the communications front, I have been working with a lot of organizations that are both testing autonomous vehicle technologies and urban planning organizations, but also technology reform. So if any of you saw the letter that went out that was about pausing training new data models that Elon Musk signed on to, was several of my clients put out that work, and have been doing a lot of work recently on briefing the media and briefing newsrooms on how to talk about generative AI and what it's going to do to our society. So thrilled to have this conversation. I'm going to do brief introductions of my esteemed panelists here, and then hopefully we will kind of prompt each other into some questions and then allow you all to have questions as well. Plass is a senior manager for the Urban Land Institute Resilience Program, where she supports program activities including research and publication reports concerning real estate and resilience. She's also an adjunct professor of geographic information systems at Georgetown University and the vice chair of the American Planning Association's Technology Division, where she's working to help planners identify and operationalize tools and resources to grow professionally and build better cities. Tom Sanchez earned his PhD in city planning from Georgia Tech and is a professor of urban affairs and planning at Virginia Tech. He'll be joining the faculty of landscape architecture and urban planning at Texas A&M next year and conducts research in the areas of urban planning and scholarly impact. His most recent book, Networks in the Knowledge Economy, was published in 2021, and Planning Knowledge and Research was published in 2018. He currently serves as the chair of the APA Education Committee and serves on the APA's AI Foresight. Quick show of hands. Who has tried ChatGPT, Bard, something? And who is using it on a relatively daily basis at this point? Oh, cool, okay. Anyone scared about what this technology could do to our jobs? Okay. What about to humanity, potentially? Cool. Got it. Anyone excited by the possibilities? Awesome. So equal parts scared and excited is what I'm seeing, which I think is a good way to think about this technology. Yeah, well, the headlines will say that as well. When you have headlines like the CEO of Google saying that he thinks it could be more profound than fire or electricity, which is how he described generative AI that they're building at Google on 60 Minutes last week. You have some of the top AI professors saying that, or a recent study of over 200 AI researchers asked, what do they think the likelihood is that AI will overtake humanity and rendering us useless? And the median answer, so 50% of people said above 10%, which is a little terrifying. But then you also have headlines of promising, solving the climate crisis, new emerging ways to to solve cancer and things. So we're getting this utopia and dystopia and of what this technology can do. And I think it's helpful to just start with, what is this technology? What are we really talking about? Generative AI is predictive. And I think I want to just start with saying that it is not like traditional search. So the way that traditional search works is that it is using a ranking algorithm to say what is the piece of information you're asking it, and how does that work, and using ranking to give you the strongest likelihood that these answers are correct. And over time, it gets better and better. Generative AI, and AI in general, is a predictive language model. So it is trying to predict what the most likely thing is to come to word to be generated next. And the thing about these systems is that they have what researchers call emergent properties, which is very different than other technologies that we've built before. Emergent properties means that its knowledge continues to grow without necessarily new inputs. So for example, Sundar, in his 60 Minutes episode that happened about a week ago now, was saying that with a few inputs of Bengali, the BARD, their AI model, can now translate all of itself into Bengalese. They don't know how, and they don't really know why it was able to do that. And these emergent properties, or these kind of black box technologies, are what make it different than traditional search or kind of traditional technologies that we've created before. It is moving fast. Like, obviously, this conversation didn't exist when Nico was putting together the agenda for Urbanism Next. But I will also say that we've gone from ChatGPT 3, which a lot of us have used in this room. ChatGPT 4, which has come out, has 500x the power and parameters of ChatGPT 3. So, I mean, 100 trillion parameters. I mean, it's so hard to say. Like, it's so hard to even capture what that means. But this technology is moving at a faster pace than we've seen from traditional tech. And I want to just put it at a point of emphasis that a lot of the controversy that we've been seeing is really around essentially a concept called alignment. And an easy way to think about it is the Midas touch. If you ask an AI system to turn everything into gold, it will do that. You ask an AI system to solve climate change, it's a potential. Guess what's one way you could do that? Get rid of us. We cause a lot of problems, right? So this who gets to determine how an AI system is aligned and what its model does is essentially a big governance question that we're all going to be asking. I wanted to just kind of level set a little bit for us. I want to ask my panelists to bring it home into what does this mean for all the people in this room. And actually, maybe I'll let you want to do a quick overview of your work?
Oh, hi. Just a quick reintroduction. I'm Lee with the APA Technology Division. I was actually brought into this conversation via Tom, who brought to our attention, planning community is truly interested in the use of ChatGPT and wondering how this technology can be implemented to augment the planning practice. I personally wanted to join this conversation because I am a big user of ChatGPT to, introduce efficiencies into my own workflow, and I'm interested in learning from you as well, ways that we can, work together with this new emerging technology and, again, enhance the planning practice. So, thank you.
I'd like to thank Nico for canceling all the other sessions this afternoon and allowing us to just kind of talk, until 5 p.m. Thank you, Nico. I've been interested in the idea of digitalization that APA has identified as one of the key trends that it's seeing, and we're seeing this in all aspects of our lives where. Whether it's documents or information or communication, whatever it might be, are now in a digital form that we can work with and easy to transfer, easy to, not as easy to lose, potentially, which has its drawbacks. But this whole idea of how can we use this for the purposes of plan making? And so I've been looking at AI really from the standpoint of tools for planners and not really as AI embedded in the city. So think of smart cities or IoT and those sorts of things. So really with the emphasis being on how do we use better data and better analysis methods to make better decisions, which is kind of the huge question. But how do we leverage these tools to do our job better? I just want to say real quickly, I came out of a fantastic session right now, Innovation Capacity in Cities, and it really made me think about some key aspects of this around innovation adoption around leadership, organization, knowledge management, networks, and learning. And that's what I think a lot of the AI and with the large language models in particular really have going to have an impact on all of those.
Lian, when we first chatted, you were had so many examples of how you're using this. I was like, wow, I'm just entering in some common phrases and asking it to make sure my grammar's okay. And Lee was far deeper on this. So can you talk about how are you using these tools right now in your work?
Yeah, sure. So it really runs the gamut, like I mentioned. Actually, if I'm able to pull up my slides, I'd be able to show you some of the practical examples. These are both the ways that these sorts of technologies could be used, and also some of the ways that I am using them. So on the left here, that's your left, right? On the left here, there was a workshop across basically global scale that was conducted by Claire Daniel with the Planning Institute of Australia, where she looked at some of the ways that planners could be using ChatGPT. And I found that that aligns pretty well with my concept of it. So here it is over here. So they're saying that you can use it for development, administration, reporting, community engagement, technical tasks, policy development. What does that even mean? So, for example, if I needed to send out a series of social media posts, advertising a community meeting, or in my case, upcoming educational webinar or report release or something along those lines, I can easily draft a template post based on just a little bit of information about the event, which I can later adapt, for use in that larger, broader campaign. That saves hours of time, and it's available in an instant. So there's that. There's also the more monotonous tasks, like in the development process, or in my personal work, building out outlines, or crafting something like a development justification statement. These sorts of processes where you need to hit certain points, and they need to be done in just such a way. The ChatGPT tool offers a really great baseline to just begin crafting some good language for these sort of repetitive documents, staff reports as well. That's another good application. And then looking at technical tasks, I use it for coding. One of the things that I do as part of my role with the technology division is I build and deploy applications and other helpful tools and utilities that planners can use to enhance their practice. And I've used ChatGPT to debug those tools. I've used it to develop code snippets that create certain utilities, features on the applications that I'm working on. And it's been immensely helpful in that regard. It also helps with workflows, so with common software platforms. So really this really broad range of applications there. And then from a policy development standpoint, say I wanted something like, and this is a real prompt that I've crafted, a draft language for a code of ordinances for resilient waterfront development. It can get you started there in terms of getting the right verbiage together, and then you pass it along to your land use attorney, get them to take a look at it. Okay, so these are all some of the great ways I've been using it, and some of the great ways that other planners, it seems, have also been using these tools in practice. Do you want me to talk a little bit about these considerations? So we also have put out a statement, an open letter about ethical use of AI in planning practice. And this is a very new release this week, actually. It touches on 4 major points that allude to these 3 ideas here: the validity of the output of these tools, the originality, the challenge to our personal creativity that this tool poses, and the potential bias that that the data sets can introduce, or the training data sets can introduce into our practice, into our communities. So I'm going to go through those 4 real quickly, I promise. The first is use of AI can introduce bias into the planning process, and it's important to be mindful about that bias. And don't hesitate to use AI to augment the planning practice, but don't delegate those sorts of tools like wholesale authority in the decision-making processes. Second is AI is fallible. So be sure to systematically check the outputs of tools like ChatGPT. It has a tendency to hallucinate. It has a tendency to forget based on the prompts that you input, and make sure that's valid. And disclose the use of these sorts of tools when practicable, and disclose their capabilities and their limitations. Educate yourself, this is number 3. Try to have at least a baseline understanding of the tools that you implement. This is AI in general, not just ChatGPT, before you implement. And finally, do not disclose sensitive information about your organization or your constituents, please. If there is a breach, that information can be out there, and that can compromise not just your organization's systems, or it can also jeopardize the community's trust in you. So those are our 4 key takeaways in that letter, and a QR code for that will be available shortly.
Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about your research? And I know that when we chatted, kind of leading up to this session, you were saying like, well, it almost felt like it was out of date by the time you put it out. And so I'd love for you to just to say kind of what were the key takeaways when thinking about this for the planning community, and then what do you think has really changed since you've put out your research?
Yeah, my focus had been, again, looking at tools that planners could use. And so I was doing a survey of, methods within machine learning, neural networks, computer vision, natural language processing, kind of the traditional, if we can use that word, tools within AI. And part of that, part of natural language processing, neural networks, and then also the machine learning, there was a little piece that I was doing some research on that was content generation, which then kind of, it goes beyond that, but just this whole generative sort of capability of taking, this corpus of knowledge and then being able to synthesize that and create these responses. I think it's pretty amazing. And what we've seen really as, we've had some pretty amazing tools available before, but now something that's more in kind of a conversational, kind of relatable sort of format. But something I want to mention too is kind of looking back in history. In the 30s, H.G. Wells came up with this idea of the world brain. And this was kind of a collection of all of the knowledge of people around the world, and he thought, what a great idea. We can put this all in one place, and then we can take advantage of that. And this was prior to, documents and books being in electronic form, any way to connect those. Basically, what he described was Wikipedia. And now we've taken that a step, further as far as this world brain, with all of this information that we can put in one place that can be synthesized, and we can, I hesitate to say draw meaning out of, but we can get some kind of useful responses to questions that we have. It is a world kind of brain possibility. So real quick, I think this has interesting applications for planning when we can curate our own large language models with local ordinances, land use regulations, our comprehensive plans, and all of this information that we use to review development proposals, to make further plans. It's really a fantastic knowledge management tool, potentially.
Obviously, there's ChatGPT, right? And then there are now this kind of ecosystem of AI-fueled tools to do everything from healthy recipe finding to, I'm sure, promise you the most beautiful streetscape you could possibly imagine. That's totally, up to code. What should folks who are thinking about trying out new tools, or what should we be looking for, the people in this room, to be aware of, or kind of maybe be cautious of, and then what is you feel ready for market at this point when you're trying to figure out, okay, what tool, how should I use this, and what tools should I potentially purchase or integrate into my workflows?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I would start off with their data and information privacy rules. Just make sure that you're comfortable with, where that information you're feeding it is going. Also, to your point about the recipe recommender, I think IBM Watson was one of the first sort of instances in which they tried something like that. And then now with ChatGPT, like a ChatGPT integration, I'd imagine it's pretty helpful. I wouldn't ask a large language model to craft a recipe for me, but if they are pre-made, let me know where I can find that. So then, in terms of other things to consider when you're selecting tools, in addition to thinking about their data privacy, I would also think about their usability and actual applicability to your practice. What I see a lot is, people getting on the hype train, and they're paying lots for subscriptions. They're paying lots for, these maybe bespoke tools or other sort of things along those lines. And you got to really step back and think: is this right for my organization? Do we need this right now, or do we need something else? And is this where we should be investing our time and our resources? So one thing that a lot of people have been saying is that, ChatGPT and other sort of similar tools, they're not like a standalone oracle. They won't give you an answer to every question you might have, but they can definitely make you more efficient. And so thinking about ways that using, access to the tools that we already have to enhance our practice might be a better approach than, jumping on the hype train, buying a bunch of subscriptions or bespoke software solutions, and then, running with it.
One of the things that I've been focusing on recently, or I've been fascinated by, is the whole aspect of fear around, the large language models in ChatGPT and these chat models, and what that's been generating. And a colleague, Federico Cugarulu, who wrote Frankenstein Urbanism, talks about this whole idea of the city becoming autonomous, basically taking over, and all of our worst fears coming true. But this idea of fear, and when I think about fear and imminent fear, I'm not thinking about something out in the future. I'm thinking more about things that I'm currently seeing around threats to democracy, really out of control inequality, climate change, affordable housing problems that we have. A lack of choice, and this book burning, and things that are going on right now that are, I think, really kind of affecting our lives today, versus what I see mainly, and this is just my opinion, is a lot of fear coming out of just the uncertainty about what can be gained. I believe we have control over this, and I think there are probably more advantages than disadvantages. Just real quick on the question of bias, I was giving a presentation last week, and I wanted to include a graphic of urban planners kind of working at their desks, at their computers with some maps. And I had ChatGPT generate the prompt that I fed into Midjourney, and what I got back was 3 or 4 white guys with ties on in the office, and this was the depiction of urban planners at work. So I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Really quick, trending on Reddit right now, there are like depictions of faculty for different types of study, like anthropology, sociology, et cetera. Most of them are white. Most of them are men.
Yeah, it goes back to the kind of like, what is the training data set? And all of our historic inequities and biases are being fed into these systems. And so we can anticipate that they will also be fed out. And I think that's a really dangerous quality of over-reliance on these tools.
So my name's Ellen Dunham-Jones. I'm a professor at Georgia Tech, and I'm embarrassed to say how clueless I am about ChatGPT, even teaching at a Institute of Technology. So, but my question is then, thank you for giving me that overview, kind of to understand it. If it's a predictive model, and it's essentially taking, however gazillion examples, and somehow, is it averaging things out, or is it selecting best examples? So for instance, if you're looking at it in terms of code, writing a code for a community, is it just kind of going to give us back the garbage in, garbage out? Or is it going to say, well, no, there's, lately we're seeing more and more codes going in this direction, and it's kind of going to give you something that's won awards? Or how does the predictiveness work?
I can partially answer that, and I think the answer is it depends, and we don't really know. For example, there's the way that OpenAI is rolling out its tools is slightly different than the way Google is. For example, OpenAI's model stops in September of 2021 right now, and Google's goes all the way to recent history. The reason why OpenAI did that is because they are trying to stop people from using it to get their news and things like that, which it just doesn't have enough information to predict well. And so they're like, the more data we have, the kind of longer period of time, it's like a safety mechanism. Google's trying to mash that up with their Google search results, and so they're allowing the model to come all the way up, but they're also trying to add in citations. The citations right now are they're quite funny. Like, some of them are correct, and some of them are just completely made up. Like, the tool literally makes up reporters that don't exist, news stories that don't exist, and cites them. And so the model
that scares the hell out of me as an academic.
Yeah. I mean, so this is emergent, right? And there isn't a code of practice, there isn't a code of ethics, and I think and you're not going to necessarily get the same output or the same answer, even just based off of which tool you decide to put your question into.
Hi, Margie Bradway. My question's along the lines of ethics, I think, as well. So I use ChatGPT in my personal life. I love it. It has its faults. I have been resident to introduce it at work because I work for a government agency. And I think as a government agency, what's been on my mind is that we fall under the American Procedure Act, the Oregon APA laws, and we're supposed to show agency discretion, right? That's what holds up in court our expertise. So has anybody talked about this in the APA? I'm talking American Procedure, Administrative Procedure Act, Administrative Procedure Act, we're public servants. Are we foregoing our expertise by relying on ChatGPT, or would I by introducing it at a work environment?
This is something that is probably, it's going to vary from organization to organization, and that's including level of government. We have talked a bit about what those implications are, and if it's possible to get my slides up, I do want to link out to to that code of ethics document, which has a little bit more discussion, from an ethics standpoint, as an AICP certified planner, what you should be probably thinking about. But the main point of guidance there is, whatever internally your IT manager, your chief information officer, or what have you, this chief information security officer, whoever it is, whatever they say is the policy internally within your agency is with regard to use of ChatGPT specifically. That is what the general recommendation is that you'd adhere to. It's really tough to give blanket advice on what to do, but the real blanket advice is whatever your CISO, your IT operations manager, et cetera, whatever they say is the policy. That is your organization's policy. As an individual and as a planner, the information that you disclose outside of that, that is something that you have a personal responsibility to regulate. And so if you're using, for example, a browser extension to craft prompts, or you're using ChatGPT directly to create prompts and get responses for use in planning documents, you do need to think about, okay, well, is this information conceivably sensitive? Is it, does it reveal information about me personally that I don't want to be getting out into the world? Oh, my slides are up, so I can link out to this if you're interested in reviewing it. So 2 things. So the first thing on the left is that ethics open letter. So you can scan that code. The one on the right, right, is the ethics open letter. On the left is the Act Like a Planner resource. So if you're curious about how to craft prompts for use in planning, you want the link on the left. And you are curious about the ethics implications. So you're going to click the link you're going to select the link on the right as well. So thank you.
Thank you all.